The hotel was the kind of place where people like her were meant to be invisible. Marble floors that took hours to polish, crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen waterfalls from ceilings so high they made her neck hurt to look at them, gold trim on everything, the smell of expensive perfume and fresh flowers everywhere. Lena Reyes had worked the night shift at the Grand Monarch Hotel for 6 years. 6 years of mopping hallways after midnight. 6 years of scrubbing bathrooms that cost more than her entire apartment. 6 years of wearing a faded blue uniform with her name stitched on the pocket in white thread that was starting to come loose. She was 34 years old, and most nights, she felt like she was already living the rest of her life. Tonight was a Friday. The hotel was hosting some kind of big corporate event in the main ballroom. Lena had seen the setup earlier that afternoon when she came in for her shift. White tablecloths, roses in tall glass vases, a stage with velvet curtains, and right in the center, sitting under a single spotlight, was a grand piano. A Steinway, black and shining like it had been dipped in liquid night. Lena had stopped walking when she saw it. Just for a moment. Just long enough for her chest to tighten in that old familiar way. Then she looked away and kept moving. She had floors to clean. The thing about working nights is that nobody really sees you. Guests walk past like you are part of the furniture. They talk on their phones, laugh with their friends, complain about the wine selection, and you just keep pushing your cart, keep your head down, keep your hands busy. Lena was good at being invisible. She had gotten used to it. But she had not always been this way. There was a time, almost 10 years ago now, when her name meant something different. When people sat in velvet seats and held their breath, waiting to hear her play. When her fingers moved across piano keys like they were made for nothing else. When teachers at one of the best music schools in the country called her gifted, special, a once-in-a-generation talent. That was before everything fell apart. Her father got sick first. Then her mother. Medical bills piled up like bricks, one on top of the other, until the weight of them crushed every dream she ever had. She dropped out of school to work. Then she dropped out of music altogether. She sold her keyboard, stopped practicing, stopped listening to classical music because it hurt too much to hear what she could no longer have. Now she cleaned hotels, and that piano sitting in the ballroom might as well have been a ghost from another life. Around 9 o'clock, Lena was mopping the service corridor behind the ballroom when she heard raised voices. She paused, leaning on her mop handle, and listened. A woman was speaking fast and sharp, her heels clicking on the floor like angry little hammers. "What do you mean he is not coming? The guests are already seated. We have 200 people in there waiting for the performance." A man's voice answered, nervous and apologetic. His flight got canceled. There is a storm in Chicago. He is stuck at the airport. There is nothing we can do. Nothing we can do? The woman's voice got higher. Do you have any idea who is in that room right now? CEOs, investors, board members. This event is supposed to impress them, and you are telling me we have no pianist? We are trying to find a replacement, but every performer we called is either booked or cannot get here in time. Lena's heart started to beat faster. She did not know why. This was not her problem. These were not her people. She should just keep mopping and mind her own business. But her feet would not move. The woman kept talking, her voice getting more desperate. This is a disaster. An absolute disaster. What are we supposed to tell them? That they flew in from all over the country to sit in silence? Lena's hands tightened around the mop handle. Her mind flashed back to another time, another stage. The feeling of sitting down at a piano and forgetting everything else existed. The way the music used to pour out of her like water from a broken dam. She had not played in almost 7 years. Not once. She did not even know if she still could. But something inside her, something she thought had died a long time ago, suddenly woke up. Before she could talk herself out of it, she set down her mop and walked toward the voices. The woman turned around when she heard footsteps. She was tall, with sharp cheekbones and a black dress that probably cost more than Lena made in a month. Her eyes swept over Lena's uniform, the loose threads, the worn shoes, and her expression turned cold. The service entrance is the other way. she said, already turning back to the nervous man beside her. Lena swallowed hard. I heard you need a pianist. The woman stopped, turned around slowly, looked at Lena like she had just spoken in a foreign language. Excuse me? I can play, Lena said. Her voice came out quieter than she wanted, but she did not look away. I trained at a music conservatory, classical piano. I know the repertoire. For a long moment, nobody said anything. The nervous man stared at her with his mouth slightly open. The woman in black let out a short, harsh laugh. You cannot be serious. I am. The woman stepped closer, looking Lena up and down like she was inspecting something unpleasant. You are a janitor. You clean toilets. And you expect me to let you walk into a room full of the most powerful people in the city and sit at a $60,000 piano? Lena felt her face get hot. The old shame tried to rise up in her throat. The voice that told her to apologize and walk away and remember her place. But something else was stronger tonight. Something that had been sleeping for too long. I know what I look like, Lena said slowly. I know what you see. But I also know what I can do. And right now, you do not have a lot of options. The woman opened her mouth to respond, but another voice cut in. Let her try. They all turned. A man was standing in the doorway to the ballroom. He was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and a calm face. He wore a suit that fit him perfectly, and there was something about the way he stood that made everyone else seem smaller. The woman's whole attitude changed instantly. Mr. Albright, I assure you we are handling this situation. I heard, he said quietly, and I am curious. He looked at Lena, and unlike the woman, his eyes did not judge her uniform or her worn shoes. He looked at her like he was trying to see something deeper. You trained at a conservatory? Lena nodded. Yes. Before I had to leave. Why did you leave? Life happened. He studied her for another long moment. Then the corner of his mouth lifted, just slightly. Life has a way of doing that. He gestured toward the ballroom doors. Come with me. The woman in black looked like she wanted to scream, but she did not say a word. Lena followed the man through the doors, her heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. The ballroom was even more beautiful than she remembered. Hundreds of candles flickered on the tables. Crystal glasses caught the light. And everywhere, were people in expensive clothes, turning to look at her with confusion and curiosity. And there, in the center of the stage, waiting under that single spotlight, was the piano. Lena walked toward it like she was walking toward something she had lost a long time ago and never thought she would see again. The walk from the ballroom doors to the stage felt like the longest walk of her life. Lena could feel every pair of eyes in the room following her. She heard the whispers starting, soft at first, then growing louder like waves building before a storm. Who is that? Is that the cleaning lady? What is she doing up there? Lena kept her eyes fixed on the piano. If she looked at the faces, at the expensive jewelry and the raised eyebrows and the amused smirks, she knew she would lose her nerve. So she just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, her worn shoes silent on the polished stage floor. The woman in the black dress had followed them into the ballroom. She stood near the side of the stage now, her arms crossed tight over her chest, her face twisted into something between anger and disbelief. Lena could feel her staring, waiting for her to fail. Mr. Albright had taken a seat at one of the front tables. He sat with his hands folded, watching with that same quiet curiosity he had shown in the hallway. He was the only person in the room who did not look like he was expecting a joke. Lena reached the piano and stopped. Up close, it was even more beautiful than she remembered. The black surface reflected the chandelier lights like a dark mirror. The keys were perfect, untouched, waiting. She pulled out the bench and sat down. The velvet seat felt strange after so many years. She placed her hands on her lap and took a slow breath. The room had gotten quieter now, not silent, but quieter. People were still talking, still laughing in small groups, but there was an edge of attention in the air. They were watching to see what would happen. Most of them, she knew, were waiting to be entertained by her failure. A man at a nearby table leaned over to his companion and said, loud enough for Lena to hear. This should be interesting. I wonder if she even knows how to read music. His companion laughed. Maybe she will play chopsticks. Lena felt her face burn. The shame crawled up her neck and settled in her cheeks. For a moment, the old voice in her head got loud again. What are you doing? You do not belong here. These people are right. You are nobody. You clean their bathrooms. You pick up their trash. You are invisible, and that is all you will ever be. Her hands started to shake. She looked down at the keys. 88 of them, stretching out in front of her like an old friend she had abandoned. She had spent thousands of hours with keys just like these. She had practiced until her fingers bled. She had played through tears and exhaustion and joy so pure it felt like flying. And then she had walked away from all of it. Because life did not care about talent. Life did not care about dreams. Life only cared about bills and sickness and survival. But right now, in this moment, none of that mattered. Right now, there was only her and the piano, and all those people who thought she was nothing. Lena lifted her hands and placed her fingers on the keys. They felt cool and smooth under her touch. Familiar. Like coming home after a long, long time away. She closed her eyes. The room seemed to hold its breath. Or maybe that was just her imagination. Maybe nobody cared at all. Maybe they were all just waiting to laugh. It did not matter. Lena thought about her mother, who used to sit in the kitchen and listen to her practice for hours, never complaining, always smiling. She thought about her father, who worked double shifts so she could afford lessons, who told her every single day that she was going to do something special with her life. They were both gone now. But somewhere, somehow, she liked to believe they were still listening. She pressed the first key. The note rang out clear and pure, cutting through the chatter like a beam of light through fog. A few people stopped talking. A few heads turned. Lena pressed another key. Then another. Her fingers found the opening notes of a piece she had not played in almost a decade. Chopin. Ballade No. 1 in G minor. One of the most difficult and beautiful pieces ever written for piano. It had been her father's favorite. The first few measures were slow, almost hesitant. Her fingers stumbled slightly on a transition. She heard someone in the audience snicker. The woman in the black dress let out a small, satisfied sigh. Like she had been right all along. But Lena did not stop. She kept playing. And slowly, note by note, something started to wake up inside her. Something that had been buried under years of exhaustion and grief. And giving up, it rose up through her chest and flowed down through her arms and into her fingers, and suddenly, she was not thinking anymore. She was just playing. The music started to build. The tempo increased. Her fingers moved faster, finding the keys without looking, without thinking. It was like her body remembered everything her mind had tried to forget. The whispers in the room began to fade. One by one, conversations stopped. Glasses were set down on tables. People turned in their seats, their faces changing from amusement to confusion to something else entirely. Lena did not see any of it. Her eyes were still closed. She was somewhere else now. Somewhere deep inside the music, where nothing could touch her. Not the doubt. Not the shame. Not the years of feeling like she was less than everyone around her. Here, in this place, she was exactly who she was always meant to be. The music swelled. Her hands flew across the keys, bringing out melodies that twisted and turned and crashed into each other like waves against rocks. The piano sang under her touch, filling the ballroom with sound so rich and full that it seemed to press against the walls. A woman at one of the middle tables put her hand over her mouth. Her eyes were wet. A man near the back, who had been checking his phone a minute ago, slowly put it down on the table and stared at the stage like he was seeing something he could not quite believe. The woman in the black dress had uncrossed her arms. Her face had gone pale. She was not smiling anymore. Mr. Albright sat perfectly still, his eyes never leaving Lena. There was something in his expression now. Something like recognition. Like he was watching someone come back to life. Lena played on. The music grew more intense, more passionate. She leaned into the piano like she was trying to pour every lost year. every broken dream, every moment of invisibility into the keys. And somehow, impossibly, the piano gave it all back to her. Transformed. Beautiful. Alive. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she did not stop to wipe them away. She could not stop. Not now. Not when she had finally found her way back to this feeling. The piece moved into its slower middle section, and the room seemed to exhale. The tension softened. The melody became tender, almost like a lullaby. Lena thought about her parents again. She thought about the little apartment where she grew up, where the walls were thin and the radiator never worked right. But there was always music, always love. She thought about the day she sold her keyboard, how she had cried for hours afterward, sitting alone in her empty room, feeling like she had cut off a piece of her own soul. But souls, she was learning, do not die that easily. They just wait. They wait for someone to wake them up again. The music began to build once more. Lena could feel the final section approaching. The part that required everything she had. Her arms ached. Her fingers burned. She had not practiced in 7 years, and her body was reminding her of that with every note. But she did not care about the pain. Pain was temporary. This moment was everything. She threw herself into the climax of the piece, her hands crashing down on the keys with a power that surprised even her. The sound filled the room, filled her chest, filled every empty space that had been hollow for so long. And somewhere in the back of her mind, behind the music and the tears and the burning in her arms, a single thought formed. This is who I am. This is who I have always been. And I am never going to forget that again. The final notes of the piece hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Lena's hands came down one last time, pressing the keys with everything she had left, and then she lifted them slowly and let them rest on her lap. For a moment, there was nothing. Complete silence, the kind of silence that feels heavier than any sound. Lena sat there with her eyes still closed, her chest rising and falling, her whole body trembling from the effort. She was afraid to open her eyes, afraid to see the faces staring back at her, afraid that maybe she had imagined the whole thing, and the music had not been as good as it felt. Then someone started clapping. It was a single pair of hands at first, somewhere near the front of the room. Then another joined in. Then another. And then, like a dam breaking, the entire ballroom erupted into applause. Lena opened her eyes. People were standing up. Not just a few of them. All of them. 200 people in their expensive suits and designer dresses, rising from their seats and clapping like their hands were on fire. Some of them were cheering. Some of them were wiping tears from their faces. A woman in the third row was openly sobbing into a napkin while her husband held her shoulder. Lena could not move. She sat frozen on the piano bench, staring out at the crowd like she had woken up in someone else's dream. This could not be real. These people, these powerful, wealthy, important people, were standing up for her, for the cleaning lady in the faded uniform who had walked in off the service corridor 20 minutes ago. The applause kept going. It rolled through the room in waves, rising and falling but never stopping. Someone shouted, "Brava!" and others picked up the call until it echoed off the crystal chandeliers. Lena felt something break open inside her chest. Not a painful breaking, a release. Like a door that had been locked for years finally swinging open. She stood up slowly, her legs shaking beneath her. She did not know what to do with her hands. She did not know where to look, so she just stood there, tears streaming down her face, and let the sound wash over her. Mr. Albright was the first to approach the stage. He walked up the steps with that same calm grace he had shown before, but now there was something different in his eyes, something warm. He stopped in front of Lena and looked at her for a long moment. The applause was finally starting to fade, and people were settling back into their seats, but their eyes stayed fixed on the stage. "That," he said quietly, "was one of the most beautiful things I have ever heard." Lena did not know what to say. Her throat felt tight. "Thank you," she managed. "I was not sure I could still do it." "Do it?" He shook his head slowly. "Young lady, You did not just play that piece. You lived it. Everyone in this room felt that. Behind him, the woman in the black dress was standing near the edge of the stage. Her face had changed completely. The coldness was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then closed it again, and looked away. Other people started moving toward the stage. A man with gray temples and kind eyes stepped forward and shook Lena's hand firmly. I have been attending concerts all over the world for 40 years, he said. That was extraordinary. Truly extraordinary. A woman with silver earrings that probably cost more than Lena's car took both of her hands and squeezed them. Where have you been hiding? She asked, her voice still thick with emotion. The world needs to hear you play. Lena did not know how to answer. Where had she been hiding? In service corridors. In break rooms. Behind a mop and a cleaning cart. Invisible to everyone who walked past. More people came. They shook her hand. They hugged her. They asked her name, where she studied, why she stopped playing. Lena answered as best she could, but it all felt like a dream, like she was watching herself from somewhere far away. A young woman, maybe in her early 20s, pushed through the crowd with tears still wet on her cheeks. I want you to know something, she said, her voice trembling. I almost gave up on my own dream last month. I am a painter, and everyone kept telling me it was not practical, that I should do something safe. I was starting to believe them. She grabbed Lena's hand. But watching you up there, seeing what you did, I changed my mind. I am not giving up. Thank you. Thank you so much. Lena felt fresh tears spill down her face. She had spent so many years feeling like her life did not matter. Like she was just taking up space, going through the motions, waiting for nothing in particular. And now this stranger was telling her that her music had changed something, that it had meant something. Maybe that was the point. Maybe that was why she had been pulled toward those voices in the hallway tonight. Not just for herself, but for everyone else who had ever been told they were not good enough. Mr. Albright appeared at her side again. The crowd had thinned a little now, people returning to their tables to finish their dinners, though many of them kept glancing back at the stage. Can we talk? He asked. Somewhere quieter? Lena nodded, still dazed. She followed him off the stage and through a side door into a small private lounge. The noise of the ballroom faded as the door closed behind them. The lounge was elegant but simple. A few leather chairs, a small bar in the corner, soft lighting. Mr. Albright gestured for her to sit, and she sank into one of the chairs gratefully. Her legs were still shaking. He sat across from her and studied her face for a moment. Tell me your story, he said. The real one. Not the polite version you gave everyone out there. Lena hesitated. She was not used to people asking about her. She was used to being overlooked. Talked past. Forgotten as soon as she left the room. But something about this man made her want to be honest. So she told him. She told him about growing up poor but happy. About her parents who sacrificed everything so she could study music. About getting into one of the best conservatories in the country and feeling like her whole life was finally beginning. And then she told him about her father getting sick. The diagnosis that came out of nowhere and turned everything upside down. The medical bills that piled up faster than they could pay them. Her mother's health failing from the stress of it all. She told him about dropping out of school to work full-time. About watching her dreams slip away like water through her fingers. About the day her mother died, just 6 months after her father, leaving Lena completely alone in the world. I stopped playing after that, she said quietly. I could not even look at a piano without crying. It reminded me of everything I lost. Everything I would never have. Mr. Albright listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Life takes things from us, he said finally. That is what life does. But sometimes, if we are very lucky, it gives them back. Not the same as before. Different. Sometimes better. He leaned forward. What happened tonight was not an accident. You were meant to be in that hallway. You were meant to hear us talking. And you were meant to walk through those doors and sit down at that piano. Lena shook her head. I do not believe in things like that. You do not have to believe in it, he said with a small smile. She looked at him, this stranger who had given her a chance when no one else would. Why did you let me play? You did not know me. You had no reason to trust me. He thought about it for a moment. Because I saw something in your eyes when you said you could play. Something fierce. Something that would not be ignored. He paused. I have learned to pay attention when I see that look. It usually means something important is about to happen. Lena did not know what to say. She just sat there, exhausted and overwhelmed and more alive than she had felt in years. Through the door, she could hear the ballroom buzzing with conversation. People were talking about her, wondering about her, asking questions she did not have answers to yet. But for the first time in a long time, that did not scare her. It felt like a beginning. Lena did not sleep that night. She went home to her small apartment after the event ended. Still wearing her uniform. Still smelling like floor polish and expensive perfume from all the strangers who had hugged her. She sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the wall until the sun came up. Her phone had started buzzing before she even left the hotel. At first, she ignored it, thinking it was just her alarm, or maybe a message from her supervisor, asking why she had disappeared from her shift. But the buzzing did not stop. It kept going and going, until finally she pulled the phone out of her pocket and looked at the screen. She had over 200 notifications. Her heart stopped. She did not have 200 friends. She barely had 200 contacts. What was happening? With shaking fingers, she opened her social media. And that was when she saw it. Someone at the event had recorded her performance. Not just a few seconds of it, the whole thing. From the moment she sat down at the piano to the moment the crowd rose to their feet. The video was everywhere. It had been shared thousands of times already, and the numbers were climbing faster than she could refresh the page. The comments were flooding in. Who is this woman? She is incredible. I am literally crying at my desk right now. This is the most beautiful thing I have seen all year. Someone find her. The world needs to know her name. Lena put the phone down. Her hands were shaking too hard to hold it. This could not be real. Things like this did not happen to people like her. She was a janitor. She was nobody. She had spent the last 6 years being invisible. And now suddenly the whole world was looking for her. By morning, the video had over 1 million views. By noon, it had 3 million. News outlets started picking up the story. Mystery pianist stuns crowd at corporate gala. Janitor's secret talent leaves audience in tears. Who is the cleaning lady with the golden hands? The headlines kept coming, each one more dramatic than the last. Lena's phone would not stop ringing. Numbers she did not recognize. Voicemails piling up from journalists, producers, people claiming to be agents. Her inbox was overflowing. Her social media had exploded with friend requests and messages from strangers all over the world. She turned off her phone and sat in the silence of her apartment, trying to breathe. This was too much. It was all too much. She had spent so long building walls around herself, making peace with a small and quiet life. And now those walls were crumbling faster than she could process. Part of her wanted to hide, to pretend none of this had happened, to go back to her mop and her cleaning cart and her invisible existence where nobody expected anything from her. But another part of her, a part that was growing louder by the hour, knew that she could not do that. Not anymore. She had opened a door last night, and there was no closing it now. Around 2 in the afternoon, someone knocked on her door. Lena froze. She was not expecting anyone. She never had visitors. For a moment, she considered not answering, just staying silent, until whoever it was went away. But the knock came again, patient and calm. She walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Her breath caught in her throat. It was Mr. Albright. She opened the door slowly, suddenly very aware of how small and shabby her apartment must look. The peeling paint on the walls. The old furniture she had bought secondhand, the tiny kitchen where the faucet dripped no matter how hard she turned the handle. But Mr. Albright did not seem to notice any of it. He smiled warmly and held up a paper bag. "I brought coffee," he said. "And pastries. I thought you might need both." Lena stepped aside to let him in. She did not know what else to do. He set the bag on her small kitchen table and looked around the apartment, not with judgment but with something that looked almost like respect. "You have made a good life for yourself," he said. "That takes strength." Lena almost laughed. "This is not much of a life. It is honest. It is real. That is more than most people can say." He pulled out a chair and sat down, gesturing for her to join him. "I am sure you have seen the video by now." She nodded, sinking into the chair across from him. "I do not understand what is happening." "What is happening," he said, "is that the world just discovered something extraordinary, and now everyone wants a piece of it." He pushed a coffee cup toward her. "The question is, what do you want?" Lena wrapped her hands around the warm cup. She had not thought about what she wanted in a very long time. For years, she had only thought about what she needed. Money for rent, food for the week, enough energy to get through another shift. Wanting things felt like a luxury she could not afford. "I do not know," she admitted. "I have not let myself want anything in so long. It feels dangerous." Mr. Albright nodded like he understood. "I have a proposal for you, and I want you to take your time before you answer. Do not say yes just because you feel pressured. Do not say no just because you are scared." Lena looked at him, waiting. "I run a foundation," he said. "We support artists, musicians, people with extraordinary talent who never got the opportunities they deserved. I started it 20 years ago because I believe that genius can be born anywhere. In mansions, in slums, in service corridors of fancy hotels." He paused. "I want to sponsor you. Pay for everything you need to rebuild your career. Lessons, practice space, living expenses so you do not have to work nights anymore. Whatever it takes." Lena felt her heart start to race. "Why? You do not even know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know what I heard last night. I know what I saw in your eyes when you sat down at that piano. And I know that the world would be a poorer place if you spent the rest of your life pushing a mop instead of playing music." Tears burned in Lena's eyes. She tried to blink them away, but they spilled over anyway. "I do not know if I can do this. It has been so long. What if last night was a fluke? What if I am not as good as everyone thinks?" Mr. Albright leaned forward. "Let me tell you something about talent. It does not disappear. It might get buried. It might get rusty. It might hide under years of pain and survival, but it does not go away. What you did last night was not a fluke. It was a reminder of who you really are." Lena wiped her face with the back of her hand. "And if I fail? If I try and it does not work out? Then at least you will know you tried. At least you will not spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been." He smiled gently. "That kind of wondering is the worst kind of pain. Trust me. I have seen it destroy people far more surely than failure ever could." She sat with his words for a long moment. Outside, she could hear the sounds of the city. Cars honking. People shouting. The endless noise of a world that never stopped moving. For 6 years, she had been standing still, frozen in place by grief and fear and the weight of everything she had lost. But maybe it was time to move again. "Okay," she said quietly. The word felt strange in her mouth. Terrifying and thrilling at the same time. "Okay. I will try." Mr. Albright's smile widened. "That is all anyone can ask." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. "Call this number tomorrow. It belongs to one of the best piano teachers in the city. She is expecting to hear from you." Lena took the card. Her fingers were trembling, but her grip was firm. She looked at the name on the card, then back at the man who had changed her life in a single night. "Thank you," she said. "I do not know how I will ever repay you." He stood up and moved toward the door. Before he left, he turned back and looked at her one more time. "Play," he said. Play like you did last night. Play like your life depends on it. That is how you repay me." And then he was gone. Lena sat alone in her tiny apartment, holding the card in her hands, feeling like the whole world had just shifted beneath her feet. For the first time in years, she was not afraid of tomorrow. She was excited for it. 6 months later, Lena stood backstage at Carnegie Hall and tried to remember how to breathe. The curtain was thick and red, blocking her view of the audience. But she could hear them. Thousands of people settling into their seats, their voices blending into a low hum that vibrated through the walls. In a few minutes, she would walk out onto that stage and sit down at a piano in front of all of them. She pressed her hand against her stomach, trying to calm the storm inside. So much had changed since that night at the hotel. She had quit her cleaning job the week after Mr. Albright's visit. She had started lessons with the teacher whose name was on the card. A stern woman in her 70s who pushed Lena harder than anyone ever had. She practiced 8 hours a day, sometimes more, until her fingers ached, and her back screamed and her eyes blurred from exhaustion. There were days when she wanted to give up. Days when the music would not come, when her hands felt clumsy and slow. When she looked in the mirror and saw nothing but a fraud pretending to be something she was not. But she kept going. She kept showing up. She kept pressing the keys even when every part of her wanted to stop. And slowly, something shifted. The rust began to fall away. The music started to flow again. Not perfectly. Not like before. But in a new way. A deeper way. Like a river that had been dammed for years, finally breaking free. The media attention had not slowed down. If anything, it had grown. Her story was everywhere now. The janitor who played Chopin. The invisible woman who brought a room full of executives to tears. People called her an inspiration. They wrote articles about her. They made documentaries. They wanted to know every detail of her life, every struggle, every triumph. Lena did not care about any of that. She only cared about the music. And now, here she was. Carnegie Hall. The place where the greatest pianists in history had performed. The place she had dreamed about as a little girl, sitting at a broken keyboard in her parents' tiny apartment, imagining a future that seemed impossibly far away. That future was now. A stagehand appeared beside her. 5 minutes. Miss Reyes. Lena nodded. Her throat was too tight to speak. She thought about her parents. She thought about her father, who used to close his eyes when she played, a small smile on his face, lost in the music. She thought about her mother, who would clap after every piece, no matter how many mistakes Lena made, and say, "Beautiful. Just beautiful. They should be here. They should be sitting in the front row, holding hands, waiting to watch their daughter do the thing they always knew she could do." But life did not work that way. Life took people away and left empty spaces that could never be filled. All Lena could do was carry them with her. In her heart, in her hands, in every note she played. She took a deep breath and stepped toward the curtain. The stage was bright, brighter than she expected. The lights hit her face like warm sunlight, and for a moment she could not see anything beyond the glare. Then her eyes adjusted, and the audience came into focus. Rows upon rows of faces, stretching back into the darkness of the hall. More people than she had ever seen in one place. And they were all looking at her. The applause started before she even reached the piano. It rolled through the hall like thunder, growing louder with every step she took. People were standing. Not just a few of them. Hundreds of them. Rising to their feet. Before she had played a single note, Lena felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. Not yet. She could cry later. Right now, she had work to do. She sat down at the piano. A Steinway. Just like the one at the hotel. Black and gleaming under the spotlight. She placed her hands on the keys and felt that old, familiar connection. The coolness of the ivory, the weight of the hammers waiting beneath her fingers. The infinite possibility of what was about to happen. The applause faded. The hall went silent. 2,000 people held their breath. Lena closed her eyes. She thought about the service corridor where this all began. The voices she overheard. The fear she felt when she spoke up. The look on that woman's face when she said, "You clean toilets." She thought about Mr. Albright, who saw something in her that she had forgotten existed, who gave her a chance when no one else would. She thought about all the nights she spent alone in her apartment, wondering if her life would ever mean anything, wondering if the music inside her had died along with everyone she loved. It had not died. It had just been waiting for her to be brave enough to let it out again. Lena opened her eyes, and she began to play. The music started soft, gentle, a melody that floated through the hall like a whisper. She played slowly at first, letting each note breathe, letting the silence between them speak as loudly as the sound. Then the piece began to build. Her fingers moved faster. The melody grew more complex, weaving in and out of harmonies that rose and fell like waves. She leaned into the piano, feeling the vibration of the strings in her chest, letting the music carry her away. She was not in Carnegie Hall anymore. She was somewhere else, somewhere timeless, a place where pain and joy existed together, where loss and hope were two sides of the same coin. She poured everything into the keys. Every tear she had cried, every dream she had buried, every moment she had spent feeling small and forgotten and invisible, and the music transformed it, turned it into something beautiful, something that mattered. In the audience, people were crying. A woman in the third row had her hand pressed over her heart, tears streaming down her face. An elderly man near the back had closed his eyes, his lips moving slightly, like he was praying. A young girl sitting with her mother leaned forward in her seat, her eyes wide with wonder. They did not just hear the music, they felt it. In their bones, in their souls, in all the broken places they usually kept hidden from the world. The piece reached its climax. Lena's hands flew across the keys, drawing out sounds that seemed almost impossible. The hall filled with music so powerful, so overwhelming, that it felt like the walls might not be able to contain it. And then, slowly, the storm subsided. The melody softened. The tempo slowed. Lena played the final notes with a tenderness that made hearts ache. When she lifted her hands from the keys, the silence lasted for 3 full seconds. Then the audience exploded. The applause was unlike anything Lena had ever heard. It crashed over her like a wave, loud and wild and endless. People were on their feet, cheering, shouting, some of them sobbing openly. The sound filled the hall, filled her chest, filled every empty space she had carried for so long. Lena stood up from the piano. Her legs were shaking. Her face was wet with tears she did not remember crying. She looked out at the crowd, at all those faces, and she realized something. She was not invisible anymore. She never had been. She had just forgotten how to be seen. Somewhere in the audience, she knew Mr. Albright was watching. Somewhere up above, she hoped her parents were watching too. She had done it. Not for the fame, not for the applause, but for herself. For the little girl who used to dream about this moment. For the woman who almost gave up but found the courage to try again. Lena smiled through her tears and took a bow. This was not the end of her story. It was just the beginning.